It's Aston Villa versus Liverpool tonight on Friday Night Football, with both teams yet to cement their place in the Champions League positions due to their recent poor form. But there's also lots of other things to discuss. Will both teams play it safe, knowing that a draw is a good result, which could pretty much guarantee both of them in the Champions League next season, regardless of other results? Will Emery rest key players ahead of their Europa League final in 5 days against Freiburg? Are we going to see Mo Salah play a cameo performance in what could be one of his final Liverpool games of all time? Will we see Ollie Watkins continue his recent good form and potentially play himself into Tuchel's England World Cup plans? And which 3 Premier League clubs are going to be cheering on Liverpool tonight, and why? All this and more talking points coming today on this episode of The Final Whistle. So let's jump in and let's get started. All right, so it's Friday. We're ready to kick off the weekend with a very interesting game tonight. Aston Villa, Liverpool, Villa Park, 8 p.m. UK time. Let's start by talking about what pretty much everybody else is talking about, and that's the current league standings. So we know what's at stake, and we know all of the surrounding stories and potential impact what this game could have on a few other teams who are very interested in the result tonight. So Liverpool and Villa both currently sit on 59 points after 36 games played. So they've got 2 left to play, including tonight's game. Liverpool sit 4th, so they sit ahead of Aston Villa on goal difference. They have a superior goal difference of plus 12 compared to Villa's plus 4. I'm telling you that because that there actually could also have an impact, the goal difference, just like it does at the minute at the top of the league. In these spaces as well, it could also end up having a big impact on the result at the end of the season as well. Now, a win for any team tonight guarantees a Champions League place. A draw pretty much guarantees a Champions League place for both. Not completely, but statistically it's still possible. But yeah, a draw pretty much guarantees it. A loss tonight for one team puts them under a huge amount of pressure. And it means that going into the last game of the season, depending on how other results go, that they could be under an enormous amount of pressure in that last game. Now, remembering that Aston Villa had a collapse at the end of last season and lost out on the Champions League spot after losing to Manchester United on the last game of the season, Emery will not want to repeat that, regardless of the fact that there's other results there, which could also mean they still get in the Champions League, but I don't think he'll want to risk that at all. So why the pressure? Where does the pressure come from? Well, the pressure comes from Bournemouth and maybe even more so from Brighton. Now, Bournemouth sit currently 4 points behind both Aston Villa and Liverpool on 55 points, and they've got the same plus 4 goal difference as Aston Villa. And then you've got Brighton, who sit currently below Bournemouth, who are 6 points behind on 53 points, but this is why I said it was important. They actually sit with a plus 10 goal difference. So that plus 10 goal difference there is why I also say that Brighton could be more of a threat than Bournemouth, but also because of the other games they've still got to play. So let's take a look here at the fixtures, what those teams have got coming up. So Bournemouth could actually make it into one of those 2 spots with a win and a draw, depending on obviously tonight's results and other results. Their 2 games, the last 2 they've got though, here's the catch with Bournemouth. Their next game is at home against Manchester City. That's on Tuesday night. So that of course is, that's why I say maybe Brighton have a better chance than Bournemouth. But Bournemouth have been brilliant all season, so there's no saying they can't go away with a victory, and certainly no saying they can't go away with at least a point at home against Manchester City on Tuesday. And their last game is away to Forest, which is totally winnable. So Bournemouth, they could get 6 points out of those 2 games. Who knows? If they get 4 instead, that could potentially put them in Champions League spots, depending on the other results. Now, Brighton, on the other hand, they need 2 wins. So a draw for Brighton in any one of the last 2 games means they wouldn't get up into the 4th or 5th spot. But when you look at Brighton's 2 games, what they've got left, they are away to Leeds on Sunday, which is totally winnable for Brighton. Leeds seem to have sort of cooled off a little bit. They're still putting in the effort, but I think given what's at stake, I think Brighton definitely could come away with 3 points against Leeds. And their last game of the season, home against Manchester United. Now, if you watched Manchester United last weekend versus Sunderland, I think that's probably what you can come to expect maybe in the last 2 games from them as well, is a little bit of a little bit of an energy, what tells you that we've already qualified for the Champions League. We don't really have much more to play for. Carrick's also looking like he's got his contract now and he's going to be the manager next season. So the pressure there on Manchester United to go out and put a result in, there's not much there, right? So maybe it's only Bruno Fernandes working his backside off to try and get that last assist what he needs in these next 2 games. So let's see. But those are the 2 teams who could potentially come and snatch a Champions League spot, depending on tonight's result. But that's not all. There's other twists to this, which is why I say it's super interesting looking at this game tonight. So Aston Villa could get a Champions League spot via the back door if they do win the Europa League next week. Okay? So regardless of their position, they could be in 10th position. If they win the Europa League, then they can get a spot in the Champions League. And here's the interesting part, right? If Liverpool fail to win tonight, but hold on to 5th position and go on to win the Europa League next week, then that 5th place Champions League spot actually falls down to the team who finishes 6th. So then the Premier League teams, they get an extra spot. So that potentially means then that any one of Bournemouth, Brighton, or even Brentford, depending on if they can push in their last couple of games, could actually end up in the Champions League if Aston Villa win next week, providing they don't finish above Liverpool. That's the other catch, right? So if Aston Villa win tonight and finish the season ahead of Liverpool, that extra Champions League spot actually disappears. So there is no 6th position Champions League place. Because if Aston Villa win next week, but they finish ahead of Liverpool, the 5th position can't drop to 6 because the 5th would be Liverpool in that scenario. So yeah, that's why I guess that all those teams will be cheering Liverpool on tonight and probably cheering Aston Villa on next week in the Europa League final, because they'll be hoping for the that extra Champions League spot to be something they can be fighting for in the last few games. All right, so let's get back to the game. Let's look at sort of some recent form now. Let's also look at some recent head-to-head games between Villa and Liverpool to see what's been going on, what can we expect tonight, and can we predict and forecast a result. The last game between these two was on the 1st of November last year. It was at Anfield. Liverpool won that game 2-0 with a solid performance. Goals from who else but Mo Salah and Gravenberch. No drama, deserved 3 points. Both teams had pretty strong team out with no major injuries. So yeah, fair result when you look at it. Now, if we focus on the recent league form, it's not been great for either team. I think a lot of people are focusing on both league and Europe when they look at the past sort of 5 games or so. But I like to just look at the league form because I think, it's a bit unfair to judge based on the fact that Liverpool had to play PSG or, the Villa were in the Europa League against whoever. I like to look at league form when I look in a league game against 2 teams because I think that gives a better picture of what might potentially happen going into tonight's game. So let's start off with Villa. Villa, of course, much to the annoyance of their fans, they drew 2-2 in their last game away to Burnley. They had to come from behind after being 1-up. And of course, Burnley already being relegated, that should have been the 3 points for Villa, and they know that it would have put them in a much stronger position tonight. But they didn't. It finished 2-2. Prior to that, they lost in a game against Spurs. Again, on that game, they didn't really show up. Wasn't a good performance. Spurs, desperate for points, managed to get points out of that game. The result was the result fair? I think so on the day. It was a fair result. but it wasn't like there was a brilliant performance from either team. Just Spurs had more to play for than Villa, and you could tell in that game. Before that, they lost away to Fulham, and they won at home to Sunderland 4-3. So they lost 1-0 away to Fulham and 4-3 at home to Sunderland. So Villa's recent form has been patchy at best. Now, there's a lot of talk about Liverpool's recent form and X amount of losses, etc. But let's remember, 2 of those losses, if you include Champions League, were against PSG. And yes, they got destroyed. Yes, they didn't play great, but this isn't the Champions League tonight. This isn't PSG. So let's focus on the last Premier League games for them. 1-1 last weekend against Chelsea. Liverpool were average, let's say. It wasn't no team was brilliant last weekend. I felt like Liverpool had the best of maybe the first 20 minutes, half an hour to some degree. They scored first, but then after that, Chelsea controlled, got the equaliser, and then it was just you kind of knew it was going to play out as a draw. Not a special game, no brilliant performances by anybody. 1-1, probably a fair result, really. If anything, maybe Chelsea deserved the win, but 1-1, fair result. Before that, of course, Liverpool lost 3-2 at Old Trafford. But then before that, Liverpool were on a pretty decent run. They won 3-1 at home to Crystal Palace. They won 2-1 away to Everton with that late victory, what they got, thanks to Van Dijk. And they won 2-0 at home to Fulham as well. So Liverpool's recent league form has not really been that bad. 3 victories, 1 loss to United and a draw against Chelsea. Not too bad league form. Now, I know Slot's been under a lot of pressure, especially because of the league position, etc. this season. And I kind of understand that. I do understand that. They've been patchy this season. Some small patches of good performances. Some poor results, especially away from home. Their away form has not been great this season. But of recently, I think Liverpool's performances have been pretty good in the league, and the results have been fairly okay. Right. When we look at the heads-to-heads from previous, and we look at when was the last time that Aston Villa actually beat Liverpool? It was so long ago that you might think people don't remember it. But the scoreline was so dramatic that I think most players who were involved, and probably most fans, probably remember it. Because it was October 2020, so almost 6 years ago. And Aston Villa beat Liverpool 7-2. In that game, Watkins got a hat-trick. I think, if I remember rightly, Grealish also played in that game. And he had a screamer of a game. I think he did at least 2 assists and 2 goals as well. But 7-2, Mo Salah was playing in that game. Van Dijk was in that game. Salah scored a couple of goals as well, both Liverpool's goals. So that was the last time. So it was a long time since Villa have actually beat Liverpool. But when they did, it kind of made up for it. But like I said, Liverpool's away form this season does give Villa some hope. Liverpool have actually suffered 8 losses on the road this season, and their goal difference away from home is actually -2. So they've not been great. Whereas Liverpool, compared to Villa at home, Villa have actually won 11 of their home games this season. They've drawn 2 and they've lost 5. So it's not terrible by Villa for their performance this season, and Liverpool's away form has been pretty bad. But if you look also at the last fixtures at Villa Park between these two, last season, it finished 2-2. The season before at Villa Park, it was 3-3. So something in the air might smell of a draw tonight. Given that both teams could actually benefit and be happy with a draw, given that the last 2 previous reverse fixtures the fixture at Villa Park has also been draw. And just given that the form of both teams has been very similar all season, there's no standout team where you're like, okay, definitely 3 points for Villa or Liverpool, then a draw maybe could be the result tonight. Hard to tell. Team news. Not much team news to update you on, really. Villa still missing Onana, but otherwise should have pretty much everybody fit. Liverpool do have a few potential boosts. So Slot confirmed yesterday Salah and Konate both returning from injury. Whether they're going to start, I'm not sure. We'll find out. And also Alisson, goalkeeper Alisson, who's been out pretty much all season, back in training, but unsure whether he'll actually be fit enough to be playing in the game. So whether he's match fit and whether he starts is another question. Probably unlikely, given the amount of time he's been out. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So what's the prediction for tonight? I'm going to give you mine, and then I want you to let me know what your prediction is in the comments afterwards as well. Now, I said everything smells of a draw, but something in my senses tells me there's going to be a pretty solid victory tonight. And I'm going to go for Liverpool. And I'm going to say Liverpool 4-0 tonight. 4-0 Liverpool, or 0-4 because they're away, of course. So I'm going to say a victory for Liverpool tonight. They're going to win by 4 goals at least. So that's my prediction. Who knows? It's really difficult to judge tonight. There's a lot at stake, but not so much at stake, if you get what I mean. Like I said, a draw could also be good. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and we'll catch up again, of course, for a bit of a recap after the match tomorrow. So yeah, enjoy the game, and look forward to the weekend. Speak to you all soon.